Do you want to bust your sales quota? Do you want to join the ranks of top 1% high-tech sellers? The Top 1% Sellers Factory podcast gives you the insights and the tools to help you achieve your sales greatness. The podcast features sales and services professionals, leaders, and experts to give you the edge you're looking for. Here's your host, Ash Seddeek.
Welcome, everyone, to the Top 1% Sellers Factory podcast. This is our exciting episode with a gentleman that I really admire for the work he does and the fact that I was able to work with him at Cisco Systems, and you'll hear me talk more about this today. But just to get us started, our guest today is Peter Meyers. He is the president of the Stand and Deliver Group. He's also the founder of the organization. He is a communication consultant. He worked with leaders in politics, business, sports, and performing arts to achieve greater influence through the spoken word. A graduate of the University of Southern California, Peter lived and studied at the Zen Yoga Arts Institute in New York and trained as a performer with the late Stella Adler and Sanford Meisner at the Neighborhood Playhouse. He is the former artistic director of the award-winning Vector Theater Company in San Francisco. In founding Stand and Deliver, Peter synthesized his experience in sports as a tennis and ski instructor, in theater as an actor and director, and high-performance psychology as a teacher at the Enslin Institute, connecting the three disciplines to develop Stand and Deliver's high-performance communication curriculum. Peter, this is just fascinating that you're able to combine all these different disciplines in what you do today. And I want to show our audience the book that you've also written recently as we speak. And maybe just to get started, share with us a bit more about how you were able to combine those three disciplines and why you've seen that there are some common areas that help you put together performance communication consulting practice.
Well, thank you, Ash, and thank you for inviting me to be on the program. It's a real pleasure. As you said, I've combined three essential disciplines with a focus on performance, because it's at the level of performance that our ideas really show up in the world. So I spent the first part of my career as a sports coach, working with tennis players at University of Southern California and with skiers. And I kept examining what's the difference between somebody who does something well and extraordinary. In the middle part of my career, I spent a great deal of time in the theater mostly as a theater director, cultivating great performances from actors. And again, I was asking the same question. Why is it that some actors can bring an audience to tears or laughter or get the hairs on the back of their neck to stand up, and some are just good? And then throughout all of this, I've been teaching at the Enslin Institute, studying high-performance psychology. What is it that creates breakthroughs? And I blended all three of these together to bring them into organizations and look at, so where do we in business perform? Well, it's in those moments when you're in the spotlight, whether it's at a conference room or whether it's on a stage, where you're asked to share your ideas. And whether it's a speech or whether it's a conversation or a meeting, ideas come into the world through communication. Mm-hmm. Our ability to articulate our ideas, to pick up what's going on in the room, to respond moment to unanticipated moment to what the other person is doing. And if you think about it, it has a lot in common with sports, which is about responding to what's going on. How do I bring about my best and take intention and turn it into action? And the same thing with theater. While theater is fiction, and theoretically organizational life is nonfiction, yes. What they have in common is that we're bringing stories to life. Mm-hmm. And we have to embody those stories. We have to take the idea that's inside and bring it into the room so that others feel it and experience it and think with you.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. That's amazing. It's just interesting to see how you combined all of those together to really bring that point home. And I know that just to position this for our audience today, our theme today, and given the fact that our audience are mainly the sales and services high-tech sellers out there, I know we want to talk about, the key communication strategies that really are game changers. And I know you have some thoughts on that, and I wanted us to start by thinking about what are the key challenges you think are facing communicators today in your own mind.
The key challenges today are, first and foremost, is that we tend to overtalk things. In my studies across the globe, in 31 countries, when I ask people what causes them to disengage, the number one reason is that people are just giving too much information.
Mm-hmm.
The second biggest problem is that we're not relevant. In other words, we're sharing information, but we haven't figured out how to tailor it specifically to the needs of the listener. And the third biggest challenge, or really, I wouldn't call it a challenge, it's the reason people don't listen, is that there's no clear point. It's as if the speaker is taking you through the forest of their mind, asking you to try to organize their thoughts and make some sense out of it. Now, here's the other thing that my research has revealed, and it's not just mine. This was borne out in lots of different studies. It turns out that most of us aren't listening about 50% of the time. Whether it's a meeting, a conversation, whether it's a speech, a presentation, or a conference call, on average, people just are someplace else 50% of the time.
Or distracted with their phones or something.
Yeah, well, that's only made it more complicated.
Yes.
So while you're sitting you think you're giving this great sales pitch, and everybody's with you in the room, it turns out that they're thinking about other things, or they're doing other things.
Yes.
And one of the questions is, how do we actually get people first to become curious enough to pay attention? And second, how do we get them engaged in the conversation? Because I think the day of the sales pitch is over.
Yes.
It's a conversation. If you're not in a conversation with them, you're at risk of being seen as selling them.
Yes.
Or that they're catching up on their emails.
Absolutely. And that leads me to get into those 7 game changers. I'd like you to start thinking about, let's cover them one by one. I'd like people listening to sort of really bear that in mind and hopefully take some notes. As to your point, how can they make sure that they speak in a way that really catches the attention of the audience and gets them to focus on what's being said? Because more than 50% of high-tech deals are dependent on how well you communicate when you are doing that final customer presentation, when you're doing that final bake-off. 50% of deals are made or broken as a result of that conversation.
Yeah. Well, here are some basic strategies. So number one, we tend to overtalk it. We tend to give too much information. And I'm going to say some things that I think that are painfully obvious to most of us, but
yes.
The thing to reflect on is, you know it, but are you practicing it? So number one, make sure that you're going in with a clear outcome. What is the goal? How will you know whether or not you're successful? And an outcome should always be focused on the behavioral or the mindset shift that you're trying to create in the other person. An outcome isn't, I want to go in and tell them all about my product and service. I'm gonna share with them the whole history of the company. That's not an outcome. That's a tactic or a strategy. An outcome is, by the end of this conversation, they're going to sign the deal. Or by the end of this call, they'll ask us in for a meeting. Or we'll get an RFP. Make sure that you know what ball in basket actually looks like.
Yes.
The second is, as far as relevance goes, and again, there's nothing new about this concept. Everybody knows that you've got to be relevant, but I can tell you, after coaching thousands of people in sales, in politics, in organizational life, all the way up to CEOs of Fortune 100 companies, almost everybody makes the same mistake. I'll say, so what's the pitch about? What's the speech about? 99 out of 100 times they'll say, what I want to say, what I want to talk about, what I want to share with them. And if you listen to what all those have in common, it's what you want.
Yes.
The question is, what does the listener need
Mm-hmm.
in order for you to produce the outcome? This is really basic, but I want you to notice how often you overlook this. What do they actually need to know? What information is relevant to them to help them, A, drive their business, second, B, to make a decision? Because a lot of what you're about to share may be fun for you to talk about,
Yes.
but it may not be something that they actually care about. The other part of relevance is, what is again, this is one of those things that we all know, but so often gets skipped. If you want to gain their attention, you've got to do it in the first 30 seconds. And you're going to have to demonstrate that with what we call a ramp. A ramp is a way of elevating the conversation by demonstrating to the listener that you've got their best interests at heart. I can come in and say, I want to talk to you all about leadership communication, because leadership communication is really, really important. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I'm sure none of them woke up that morning and said, I think I need to work on my leadership communication.
Yes.
Or I could open up and say, look, many of you are facing some key challenges. You're seeing markets disappear that were there only yesterday. You're facing a workforce that, for the most part, is disengaged. You're having shorter and shorter deadlines where you're going to have to try to get twice as many things done in half the time with fewer resources. And a lot of you guys are asking yourself, how are you going to compete in this environment? Today, I want to talk to you about leadership communication, because that's where you're going to begin to get some of the untapped resources that are available to you. So what I've done is I've linked my value proposition to the pain and the opportunity that they're facing, and it's that simple.
And that's what
you
started. I like that.
The formula for this is, why should they care?
Yeah.
You've got to ask yourself, why should they care to listen to me? And believe me, they probably don't care about your company. They probably don't even care about your service.
Yes.
What they care about are the problems that they're facing today.
Exactly.
What changes have occurred in their industry, in their particular organization, in their field, and how are you going to address that problem? Because communication at its best is an offer. It's a solution.
Yes.
It's a way of solving somebody else's problem. You got to start by demonstrating that you understand the problem.
That's terrific, Peter. I wonder if you could then maybe think about what needs to happen prior to that conversation, right? Whether it's that person himself or his team, in order to really come with that sequence, if you will, in the communication in mind, that they bear in mind that whatever is on that audience's mind, what's top of mind for them, and start with that ramp. If you can talk to that preparation process.
Yeah, well, it's a really important question, and thank you, Ash, because the truth is we never really know for sure what's top of mind for them. You're speculating.
Yes.
But we all know the answer to the question, what do you do before? Well, you've got to research what's going on in that particular industry. You've got to spend some time understanding the client, what some of their problems are. If you've had the opportunity to conduct some interviews in advance, great. If you haven't, it's a click away, and all kinds of information will be revealed to you. But generally, if you're talking to big pharma, it doesn't take long to understand that there's been an incredible number of mergers and acquisitions, and you can start to put together a narrative that hopefully will be relevant to them. I'm not really big on what I would call mitigators, which is softeners. But when you're taking a guess at what's top of mind, one of the ways to demonstrate certainty and humility at the same time is to use a softener or a mitigator. So one might say, right now there are incredible numbers of mergers and acquisitions going on in your industry. And I would imagine that many of you are facing, or some of you may be wondering. There are ways of saying, I don't know for sure, and I don't want to be presumptuous, but given what's going on in the field, here are some of the things that I would imagine that you may be facing right now.
Yes.
And if you name a few of them, you're probably in the right neighborhood. Now, if you've been to the client many, many times, you should know more. But if it's absolutely cold, you can at least start by saying, listen, I've done my homework.
Yes.
I know what's going on out there, and I know what may be keeping you up late at night.
Absolutely. And I like how in one of our notes here that we shared before our conversation, the fact that there's so much content that the customer already has. And as someone who's coming to speak to the customer, to your point, if they are bringing some insight that shows that they understand the business that they are in, they understand the pains that they are in, that's very critical. And as a ramp and as an opener, when you think about the rest of that meeting, how do you continue, maybe interject at certain points in that meeting, some strategies that help you continue to maintain their interest? Any ideas on that?
Yeah. You change the IU ratio. It's that simple. If your conversation were broken down, if we could put it on a document and count the I's and count the U's, if what we're hearing is, so I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do and our history, and I want to tell you a little bit about my background and why I'm so committed to your organization. I want to talk a little bit about how I came to these conclusions. This is really all about you. One of the ways to notice whether you're I-focused or you-focused is simply by looking at the pronoun. I could come on the call and say, thanks, Ash, let me start by talking about myself, or I could say, look, many of you may be facing situations where you're going in to see a customer, and you just fill in the blank after that. But you want to make sure that the first part of each answer, solution, or even value proposition starts with an understanding of what they're facing. So in a sense, you're always framing. That's the sort of linguistic, that's the fancy word for it. You're framing the conversation in terms of the customer's condition.
Yes.
And your service or product is constantly framed as a way of lifting up the possibility of opening new markets for them. And there aren't infinitely many value propositions. You're going to increase the top line.
Yes.
You're going to reduce risk. You're going to free up some people's time,
resources,
so that they can resources, so they can focus on the right thing. You want to. There aren't infinitely many possibilities, so you got to nail it down to those few things that you're actually going to solve.
Absolutely, that's terrific. Now, when you think about, I mean, you've seen people do this really well, and people who are sort of average in doing them, and our positioning is we're really trying to talk to people about how they can become the top 1% that do this really well. What tips do you give them to do exactly what you just said, but not just once, but repeatedly and consistently? Any strategies for doing that?
Yeah, I appreciate what you said, because it shouldn't be seen as a trick, or a little technique that you're doing and getting away with something, or what. There's a mindset that top sellers bring when they face a customer. And the mindset is not that I'm here to sell you something, but I'm here to offer you a gift. And that gift is in two forms, not one. The first gift is the insight that you're bringing. We know that in complex deals right now, it's no longer about just getting rapport and demonstrating that you also know a little bit about sailing or the Giants game or whatever it was. That's important, getting rapport in the beginning. But what people want to know is, can you bring me ideas? Can you bring me market insights? Can you help me see around the curve that we're facing? And what top sellers consistently do is they come in with a spirit of generosity. Say, I'm not just saying it, I'm really here to help drive your business, to help you solve these problems. You're always coming in with a consultative mindset.
Yes.
And that includes not only providing ideas, but asking great questions. When you ask great questions, you're not just gathering data, but you're helping the other person clarify their thinking. Really great questions provide a context for the other person to make discoveries.
Yes.
So the sale has already been made before you even talked about the product, because you've taken a genuine interest in what's going on for them. And you've created a bond. A bond is a relationship where the other person believes that you have their best interest at heart. It's a demonstration. Saying I have your best interest at heart doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
you have to do something. So bringing ideas in, bringing insight, bringing genuine curiosity, and of course, looking at the relationship long term. Of course, there are sometimes where you get the sale and it happens, it's wonderful, but top sellers are in it for the long game. They're trying to cultivate long-term trusted advisor relationships. So you truly are putting the customer first.
Absolutely. And I remember when, and I'd like us to just to kind of maybe share with the audience the example that you and I worked on at Cisco. You know, you came in, I mean, I remember talking with many organizations outside Cisco to try to find the right talent and organizations such as yours in front of the top 50 client directors at Cisco who manage a very large portion of the business. And after we did the 2 days that you did with them and amazing feedback from each one of them, I love how after that we made sure that you worked with them to coach them along the way and make sure that there is some reinforcement that took place. If you could talk about the work that you do and how you move from the work that happens before we come in front of a critical audience such as this audience, again, sort of top 1% audience, and then the work that happens afterwards to really ensure that people at the very end of the day get this sort of embedded in their system and it becomes a natural part of how they speak with their customers.
Yeah, so this is really a question about sustainability.
Exactly.
And as I talked about, earlier, I spent my whole life learning how people learn, or studying how people learn.
Yes.
And when we run programs at Stand and Deliver, they're super exciting. People learn an incredible amount of. They learn strategy, they learn technique, they get feedback, they get practice. This is 2 days of intensive work. And people come out of this going, wow,
yes,
everything has shifted for me. This has been one of the best programs I've ever done. But we want to make sure that people don't just leave and feel like they've learned a lot and then forget it as they go forward. But like anything else, when you learn something, you've got to have opportunities to continue to practice it. But it's not just practice, it's smart practice. We've heard a lot about 10,000 hours. Well, it's not just 10,000 hours. You have to be practicing in a smart way. So what is smart practice? Smart practice is when you're applying new things that you haven't done before, but you're having the opportunity to either work with a coach or a teacher or a mentor to begin to process what worked well and what didn't work well. For example, this is, if you think about the path to mastery, and let's put it in the context of a golf game.
Yes.
You go up to the golf course and you talk to the pro, and the pro comes over and he changes your grip on the iron. And whether you play golf or not, you'll understand the concept. He changes your grip, and he changes your grip on the iron. Chances are, as you start to swing that club, the ball is going all over the place. You got worse. And what happens with most people, they go, that lesson wasn't of any value. I'm not hitting the way I used to hit. And so they go back to the old way. But if you're practicing in a smart way, you're analyzing what you're doing, and you may have a bad practice or two, but suddenly what you've learned starts to click. And you take that you take that technique and you put it into practice, and soon you're hitting that ball further than you ever thought you could because you've connected to it. And then, of course, you hit a threshold after a while, and then you change something else. But you've got to be able to keep looking at it. So what we do is we make sure that we're staying with people, that we're providing that ongoing coaching and mentoring for the next 6 weeks, which is how long it really takes to put a new technique into practice.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I love everything you said, because I think a lot of people listening to this would just want to know well, how does it happen? And the fact that you talked about making sure that they have some kind of a coach or some support system that gets them to that next level.
Yeah, because here's I mean, and we can all see this in our lives. We generally get good enough. We get good enough at something.
Yes.
Particularly around communication. You get good enough, and I can communicate my ideas, and then we flatline, we hit a threshold, and we generally stay there until there's some kind of a disruption. Either an opportunity shows up or something happens that's really painful. And you go, okay, never again. I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to study this. I'm going to get better. Yeah. But if neither one of those show up, we tend to just kind of hang out in mediocrity or good. The problem with mediocrity is that if you're just doing a mediocre job, you're going to find you don't have a job after a while. And if you're doing a good job, all you're getting is mediocre results. It's only at the level of outstanding that anybody even notices anymore. Yes. So the first step in raising your technique is to raise your standards. Mm-hmm. Raise your standards to that level of outstanding and be willing to do the hard work to get there.
Absolutely. One of the things that you talk about in the book, and I'm again reminding the audience, the book is called As We Speak, How to Make Your Point and Have It Stick. Overcome your fear of public speaking, learn the secrets of high-performance communication, win over an audience with your voice, and make difficult conversations easy. This reminds me of the whole concept of state that you talk a lot about, Peter, and a lot of the account managers, service professionals, sales professionals listening, a lot of stuff goes on with any sales deal, any customer opportunity. Lots of challenges. A competitor hits the deal, and there's a chance that you might get, pushed out of the deal. How do you tell that account manager or the account team lead to sustain their state? And how does it show up in how they communicate?
Well, appreciate the question. Let's define state first of all. So when I was coaching skiers, when I was coaching tennis players, when I was coaching actors, the thing that really defined the outstanding performance was that they could manage their state, your psychological and emotional condition when you're under pressure is what ultimately determines how you perform. Mm-hmm. When you look at really great performers, they're all just as, if you're watching tennis or football, everybody's just as strong as the next one. They're all just as trained. They're all just as educated. But the real distinction is who knows how to manage their state. Now, what happens with most of us is we get into a high-pressured situation, and the pressure takes over, and the anxiety, the fear, and sometimes even the terror gets the best of us. And our best ideas don't manifest. It's like you're trying to download some of your thinking, and it feels like your brain is on dial-up. Yeah. You can't get anything through the pipes, and you wind up, you feel like a deer in the headlights. So managing your state isn't about getting over your nerves. Mm-hmm. It's about being able to source the emotions that bring about your best. And those moments when you go into flow, when you're operating at a level, you go, gosh, this is amazing. This is just coming to me where the ideas flow and you're responding to the room, you're connecting with your ideas. And it's not that you're relaxed, but you're grounded. You know the stakes are high, but you're not being hijacked by your own emotions. You're channeling those emotions to support you. That's what those are those golden moments. Well, the top performers are doing that on purpose consistently. And just as you prepare to see a customer by looking at their situation, what a top performer does, whether they're a tennis player, whether they're an actor or a singer or a dancer, or whether they're a salesperson, is they know how to take a couple of minutes before they get in there and focus their mindset, get their physiology in the right state, get themselves in top form so when they walk into the room, there's light in their eyes, and more importantly, their brain is lit up like a Christmas tree. They're alive. They're excited about being there, and their ideas begin to flow.
So that's fascinating because, I mean, as you're talking about it, it's exciting just to hear you talk about it because it does make a difference. And I think the key challenge for a lot of these account managers is essentially, of course, the most the big shortage is having enough time. So I think you're talking about really planning for this and building it into the schedule.
Well, yes, and we have, it's what is it? It's we started this at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And like you, I'm super busy. I didn't have a whole lot of time, but I took a couple of minutes right before we started the call to say, what kind of a state do I need to be in to be able to sustain this over 45 minutes or longer?
Yes.
Because the state I was in when we came together and said, "Oh, hi, Ash, good morning, let me have a little coffee," that's not going to work.
Yes.
But it's a minute or two. You think about how long it takes you to start to feel bad about something. It doesn't take very long. It's usually a fraction of a second. Well, one of the things we do in our programs is we're giving people specific strategies and practices for getting themselves into a genuinely high-performance state before the event. And this is crucial. And it's the thing that almost everybody overlooks. It's amazing to me. We're really good at getting ourselves nervous, stressed, angry, upset. We're not so good about getting ourselves into a state of intellectual generosity, of joy, of purpose, of connection, of gratitude.
Yes.
Here's the other thing about it. It isn't that hard. We just don't do it.
Yeah. Do you have a particular self-conversation or self-talk that happens to get in that state? I mean, I like how you said, what state do I need to be in order to do this conversation with Ash? Could you speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, and this is all stuff that we cover in our high performance communication series. And if any of you are interested in that, you can go to our website, which is standanddelivergroup.com. Stand and Deliver Group. You have to say group, otherwise you get the movie. Standanddelivergroup.com, and you'll see some of our invitational programs in San Francisco, in New York, and in Europe. And then, of course, we do them in organizations as well. We'll come in and work with a whole team on this. So I'll give you the triad or the three basic ways to manage your state. But the real value of this is when we get to do it together. So the first way in which we manage our state is through our physiology, the way we use our body, the way we breathe, and the way we use our facial muscles has a direct and immediate impact on how we feel. Mm-hmm. If you're grimacing and your torso is buckled over and you're not breathing very much, it's almost impossible to get into a state of flow. Can't happen.
Yes.
So right now I have a stand-up desk, so I'm standing. And right before we started, I stretch, I breathe, I open up my face. It's just like getting onto the tennis court or going down a double black diamond. I'm going to make sure that my physiology is connected to my brain, and I'm waking up my brain through my body, my breath, and the 88 muscles in my face.
Yes.
The second way we manage our state is through what I would call the mind's eye. The mind's eye, or what we focus on.
Okay.
What we focus on becomes our reality. Whatever you focus on becomes your reality. The problem is we're hardwired to focus on the negative. I say hardwired because it's built into our evolutionary makeup to look for what can go wrong, to look for the saber-toothed tiger, to look for the mistake, to think about all our insecurities, to think, will I remember everything? Will I get it right? What if he asks me a tough question? Am I smart enough? Do I know this? And we generally come up with, no, I don't. And we go into a spiral, and all of this happens in milliseconds.
Absolutely.
So I change the question, and I go, what's great about this? What's great about this opportunity? What am I looking forward to? What am I excited about? When I get excited, I go, what am I excited about with this?
Yes.
So I'm not just giving positive self-talk. I'm actually asking questions and looking for answers.
Exactly.
What am I excited about? I actually went through this. So this is a chance to reconnect with Ash and share some of my ideas. What else am I excited about? This is a chance to get out to folks that I haven't met before and share some of these ideas. What else am I excited about? This is a chance to talk about some of the new things that we're doing. And I'll just go through that, and pretty soon I'm going, I can't wait to get on the call.
Yes, that's awesome. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
There's a third element to this, which is it has to do with mindset or beliefs. What are the core beliefs that you're holding about yourself, about your product or your service.
Yes.
A belief is a feeling of certainty about what something means.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the source code. Behavior is simply how belief walks into the world. If you're trying to change a behavior, look at the source, which is the belief system
Behind it.
It's the story that you're telling yourself about what something means. You know, there are salespeople, for example, that love getting rejected. They love it. They go, every time I get rejected, I'm getting closer to a sale.
Uh-huh.
That's the story they take from it. I wouldn't say they love getting rejected, but they don't get despondent about it.
Yes.
There are some people that go, you know, if they get rejected, they go, gosh, and they take it personally, and they feel rejected, and they say, well, that means I'm not, or this isn't, or
so. I'm not cut out for this.
I'm not cut out for this. Yeah. You know, some people go, the harder it gets, the more I like it. Is that true? I don't know, but it's true for them. Some people will say, well, Peter, this is great for you. You're an extrovert. You know, you've got all that theater training and all. I'm an introvert. I'm more analytical. I can't be as outward as you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know, maybe, but that's just a story. You just got a limiting belief in your head about what it means to be analytical.
Yes.
I would say that introverts and analytical people have a much higher potential for creating trust because they're not just shooting their mouth off like extreme extroverts.
Yes.
They're more thoughtful.
Exactly. And take
They're
time
more
to think about it.
introspective. They reflect before they speak. So how are you framing some of the challenges around you? Are you framing them in ways that diminish you or that excite you and move you forward? You want to make sure that you're constantly taking stock of the belief systems that drive your behavior because they fall into two categories: empowering beliefs,
yes,
and limiting beliefs.
Absolutely. Very good point. And that actually leads me to the point where, again, a lot of these professionals out there and the sales leaders that they work with are being challenged from a leadership perspective, given the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And I know in one of your notes here said that the way we come about looking at how we train leaders is all wrong. What did you mean by that? If you could talk to that a bit more.
Well, the way we currently are training leaders is we take them away from the team and we bring them into, we sort of isolate them someplace else. And if you think about it, imagine trying to train captains of a ship. You take them off the ship and remove them from their crew.
That's weird, yeah.
It is a little weird.
Yeah.
So we're going to train you how to imagine trying to learn how to ride a bicycle by getting off the bicycle. So what we do is we train captains on the ship with the crew. And let's look at first, what is the mission that this particular group is focused on? I have a son who's a Navy SEAL, and one of the things that he taught me is that we know the mission of the SEALs, the overall mission. But every time we go out, whether it's 2 hours or whether it's 2 weeks, there is a mission that we're focused on. We know who the leader is, and we are all united by that mission. Well, the same is true in organizations. So when we train leaders, we train them in the context of the team and first start with, what is the mission that this team is absolutely focused on, and how will you know when you get there and you plant the flag on top of that mountain?
Yes.
Secondly, what's everybody's job here? There's what's written down on some piece of paper or some title or job description, but there's what do you do and what do you really do? What is the gift that you bring to this team?
Yes.
And getting people to drop in and get really clear about that. The same is true in a sales team. So I may be the technology guy and there's a relationship guy, but what do I really do? Some people are orchestrators. Some people are really good at getting rapport. You want to get absolutely clear about everybody's role, and then look at what are our communication strategies. How will each one of us work together to complete the whole phrase here?
Yes.
Everybody has a unique voice, and it's the blending of those voices that can often make the difference. So today in a complex sale, it's rarely one person going in. You're usually going in flanked on the right and on the left and maybe more.
Yes.
But too often what we're hearing is 3 different presentations, and you wouldn't even know these guys work together.
Right.
How are you functioning as an ensemble to really demonstrate that you're holding hands walking in there, that truly is a team? Because there's the
So
communication
connected,
and there's
yeah.
the meta communication. And that's your body language. It's how are you connecting with each other? Do we sense that you like each other, that you guys really do? Can you finish each other's sentences in a way that, oh, you go, these guys really do think alike, and they're collaborative.
Exactly, exactly. Which also would tell the customer that if you were to work with them, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a very integrated, collaborative team that puts your interest, the best interest in mind for that
It's one
customer.
of the great things in these trainings that we do is that you're working with colleagues, and you're not only learning from us, but you're learning from them, and you're learning how to build off of each other, just like a great jazz band will start to riff off of each other. There's so much talent out there, but we're just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. Before we close out, I want us to look at the concept of stories, and I know you mentioned that in your notes to me. I think we all think about stories. We know that they help us connect with our audience. But again, in the sales environment, probably a lot of account managers thinking, I don't have enough time to do so. How do you respond to that? How do you make sure stories still are a part of connecting with that audience?
Well, anybody that's in sales is a storyteller,
Yeah.
and you don't have time not to tell stories, because stories are the most efficient way to transmit value. We have to just redefine what we mean by stories. Too often when we think about stories, we say, let me tell you a story. First of all, never say, let me tell you a story. It's just like, let me tell you a joke. It's going to be really, really funny.
Yes.
Just tell it. But story can be as simple as an example. It can be an example. You know, we met with a customer last week. This is a story.
Yes.
And they were facing X, Y, and Z problem. And what we did is we sat with them and we showed them this and we showed them that. And lo and behold, they're putting it into practice, and they're finding that they've just gained 20% of their resources doing this. They've freed up a whole lot of time. They're focusing on a much better problem now because we've solved that problem. That's a story.
Absolutely.
We were talking to a customer the other day, and we've talked about align. You know, one of the things we do is we get teams to really work together and align. He said, "I'm trying to get them to swim faster, and it turns out that they're afraid of the water." That's a story.
Yes.
Make no mistake about it. That's a story.
Yes.
When you start to see a human face, there's a story in those two sentences. So stories can be extremely. Now you could have explained that on 5 different PowerPoint slides. That the team. We're trying to create greater efficiency with the team, but there happen to be a lot of concerns about whether or not they feel safe in the environment. Because he said, listen, we want to get them to swim faster, but it turns out they're afraid of the water. Bingo, we got it.
Absolutely.
A metaphor is a story.
Got to start at the foundational elements before you cover anything else. Here's
the interesting thing about stories. It's natural to tell stories. It's so, it's so embedded. Think about, if any of you think about your passwords. If you look at anybody's password, behind that password, there's a story. Nobody makes up a random password. There's a story. Oh, it was my first motorcycle that I named and the year that I graduated. There's a story there.
Yes.
So we tell stories. It's the way we've learned things forever, and sales is all about stories. Secondly, there's a lot of science right now that demonstrates that when you tell a story, what happens is certain parts of your brain light up, and we can see this on a scan. Yes. But it turns out that the other person's brain lights up the same way yours does when you're telling them a story. So it creates this incredible alignment.
Interesting.
The third thing about stories is that they're sticky. People will forget most of what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Exactly.
And when you put a human face on it, it touches the emotion as well as the intellect.
Absolutely, that's terrific, Peter. So we'll wrap things up with your. I know you wanted to talk to me about how everything we just said is very critical, especially when we have to manage the one thing that happens a lot, as you said, and we always wonder why are we doing it, which is basically the number of meetings a lot of sellers and a lot of other people in other professions are facing every day is that they have a huge number of meetings that they have to run. And we talked about how do you maintain state, how do you connect with the audience. When you think about these meetings, and you think about how much of a time drain they are, an energy drain. When you think about that account manager who wants to maintain the level of energy throughout the day and at the same time do an effective meeting, what do you think is the most important thing that he or she needs to do in these meetings to make them effective?
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. Most of us are spending most of our time in meetings, and most people will say most of their meetings are a waste of time.
Yes.
So how do we take this non-renewable resource called time and make better use of it in our meetings? What we're seeing now, especially in complex deals, is that it's no longer a pitch, it's a conversation. And that conversation wants to be somewhat choreographed.
Yes.
But more than ever, it's an unpredictable environment. So you've got to be prepared to give an executive summary. And that executive summary is generally going to be a ramp, which is a demonstration of relevance,
Yes.
and a short pitch, which is usually about 3 minutes max, because they're going to interrupt you anyway. Which you want them participating. If they're simply passive with their hands folded, they're not doing well. So you want to actually create an environment that says, look, what I'm going to do is give you a quick summary, and then I want to pause, not to take questions. It's like last century, to take your questions, to have a discussion.
Have a conversation.
I'm interested in hearing some of your ideas, some of your thoughts, some of your inquiries. Now, they may or may not ask questions, so you've got to be prepared to facilitate the room. So one of the questions you might be wondering is, or Charles, I know that you had some concerns about. Have we answered that question, or would you like us to say more about it?
Mm-hmm.
Susan, I know you want to start to demonstrate that you are truly a relationship manager. You're braiding all of those threads together in the room. And when you're done with that meeting, they go, wow, that felt good. We all contributed. They were able to answer questions. And of course, you want to be able to work with your team. You want to defer to, the team member on your left or on your right and say, well, that's a great question. For my colleague Ash, he's got a lot of background in that. Ash, what do you think? And it's important, here's a little technique in that. Always say the name first. I wouldn't say, well, that's a great question. What do you think? Ash? Excuse me, what? Hello. So Ash, I know you've had a lot of experience with that. What do you think? Now that 4 seconds, which is all he needs.
Exactly.
And Ash is ready. It's like playing soccer and kicking the ball right to his feet.
Yes.
Keep that conversation going in the room.
That's terrific. Thank you for sharing that. That's been terrific, Peter. And I want to share with the audience the fact that we are going to offer the first 3 people that go to the following link an opportunity to actually experience Peter and his team in person. Peter has a program coming up in San Francisco on the 30th and the 31st of March. It's one of the invitational programs. So would love for you to go to www.connectwithash.com/Peter, and then you'll find a form excuse me, you'll be able to fill out, and we are going to actually offer a discount for the first 3 people to go to that page, and then for the first 5, we're going to actually offer a copy of Peter's book as we speak. It's a fantastic book, and if you don't get a chance to experience Peter, it's one of the most amazing experiences you should really pursue. But in the meantime, the book is a nice introduction to the kind of insights Peter shares. And as you've seen Peter share with you today, amazing insights about how you really can show up differently and come across differently and really have an impact and a result to the communications you have. We're all talking every day, but are we really connecting? And I think the work that Peter does makes a huge difference when it comes to really make sure that you connect with your audience. Peter, I'll give you the floor again, parting thoughts, and then a reminder again about the different cities where you typically hold your invitational programs.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. For those of you who are interested in working with us, you can look us up on standanddelivergroup.com. And we offer programs in San Francisco. We offer them in New York and in London. Most of our work is in company, though. We love to talk to managers who are interested in taking the whole team up to the next level. And the power of that is exponential because the whole team has a shared vocabulary about raising their standards. I would leave you with this. Unlike skiing, where you have to find a mountain, or tennis, where you've got to find a partner and find a court, the great thing about communication is within the next 15 minutes after you hang up, you're going to have an opportunity to practice this. We use about 10,000 words a day. We have about 100 conversations every week. We have 1,000 meetings a year. Each one of them is an opportunity to not only connect, but inspire another human being. It doesn't need to be a Nobel Peace Prize winning speech, but if you can truly connect and leave each person a little better than the way they were when you first started that conversation, look ahead a year, 2 years down the road, and imagine what's possible.
That's awesome, Peter. Thank you so much for your time this morning and your insights. And I want to encourage everyone to check out Peter's company's website, and definitely also reach out to me. We would love to hear from you and get your feedback. We want to make sure these podcasts are really effective in giving you the key nuggets that make a difference in your sales activities every single day. Peter, thank you so much for being here, and thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Top 1% Sellers Factory podcast. Give us your suggestions and guest recommendations by emailing us at ash@connectwithash.com. Thank you also for sharing this podcast with your colleagues and social media contacts. To connect with us on LinkedIn, please send a connect request to ash@connectwithash.com. See you at our next episode. Thanks for tuning in.